Hey, how's it going? I'm just gonna go over a recap as to my weekly wins, losses, and issues, and just try to identify some patterns and themes in my own trading. This more so would be a personal log, more so to figure out where my weaknesses are, and just to backtest every single session to see if I potentially would have taken any trades and the reason behind those trades, as well as if I would have just got stopped out because it was just markets didn't work, right? So let's clear this out. I think I'm gonna leave some of these on actually because some of these are actual trades I've taken. All right, so these are actual trades I've taken. So let's take a look. Starting off with Tuesday. So Monday was closed, I believe, for Memorial Day. So Monday was closed. And just for some insight, this purple line here is the overnight highs. So I think my indicator is a little messed up here. Yeah, so overnight highs was this purple line. And the red line is initial bounce high, initial bounce low. So to begin with, my textbook setup, I would say my textbook setup would be if we have a open inside day and we more so look to tag the yesterday's high or yesterday's low, being that the blue and orange line are yesterday's high and low, but this was from a holiday. So it was Memorial Day. We only opened from 9:30 to 12:45. So it was a shorter session, hence the lower volume and the tighter range. So I wouldn't really take the open inside day as much into play. But the first trade that I do see as a valid trade is, just targeting this overnight high. Reason being is because we are in an all-time high market. So if you just take a scroll back, if you just zoom out, right? So you just take a look outwards, you could just see that we're continuously building higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, right? So if we're continuously building higher lows, I kind of want to aim to the upside, right? I want to play to the upside. I want to play with the overall trend rather than try to counter trend trade and look for my own type of, counter reversal trade, which does work, but it's easier to trade the overall trend. So the first trade that I would have taken is, I think I did actually take it, is the failure to go lower setup here. So you can see that we have a pause bar here. We failed to create a new low, and instead the following candle, we broke out and created a new candle high, being that that was a valid setup because we basically were just using this low as risk, right? Whereas my risk at 817 or 8, I would say my risk probably 817 because I like to use sevens or threes as my stop loss number. And we would have tagged this purple line here, which is the overnight high. I remember the issue I had with Tuesday was, okay, Tuesday long back above the opening print, right? And my loss was also trying to trade the YM. I think one issue I had here, so I think my actual trade, so this was the ideal trade. I think my actual trade was more so like something around here. Was longing something on the pull of the opening print. So it was more so, I guess, something around here. Longing towards the opening print, which was a 1 to 5, but because it still was only 10 o'clock and you had the 30-minute orb to the upside break, we still had a room to the upside here. Like, this is imaginary. Like, if you just held till initial balance high is set and just tag the first hour's high. But I remember one issue I had on Tuesday, right? I believe was longing EMAs with no confirmation, right? And that was a issue for me, right? Because if you could see right here, in theory, what I thought was that, okay, we broke above initial balance high, which is right here. And if I had to guess, what I was doing was that I was just taking stabs along with the lack of confirmation, right? So if we take a look back on Tuesday, which is this day right here, I attempted to take some longs, I remember, like around like pullback, right? Initial bounce high, right? I was trying to target, I think 150 or 200. I think more 50 was more of a reasonable target, but you can see like I tried to enter in here. Why? I don't know why. I don't know why. There was no confirmation of any type of flip. I remember I ended up taking this long right here. So this was a decent entry long. Reason being is because we do have a CBC flip to the upside. When I mean CBC flip, I mean that the candle closed above its prior candle's high, meaning that there's a bullish shift in trend, at least in a 2-minute time frame here, but still 2-minute time frame is decent. I think it's a good shot long in regards to even if you're looking for a high of day, right? Let's say risking this pivot low, but let's say I want to give a little more room. Instead of just risking that complete low, I probably would have risked 93. That's a realistic stop. would have ate that stop right there. And then I think, again, I probably would have attempted a long right here on a 2-minute buy. 2-minute buy would have, again, shot my shot long again. Instead, this time I probably would have risked like 83, right? Still, again, looking for a high of day, or at least a new high of day. That itself is like almost a 1-to-4 trade. Still would have ate the stop. But the best trade, right? The best trade I think I would have seen, and I did take this on evals after stopping out of my funders, is when we want to look for a trade, we want to look for the trend, the level, and the signal, right? What is the overall trend on Tuesday here? I mean, overall trend, yes, is the upside. But if you take a look at the 5-minute chart, which is also the same chart, same day, instead we have a different type of view, you can see that we had a 5-minute CVC flip to the downside, meaning that we had a 5-minute trend saw, a 5-minute trend flip to the downside. And ever since we flipped trend, there was no new 5-minute bar that was able to close above the prior 5-minute bar's candle. And this, in theory, is a failed auction, right? You break above the initial bounce high, and now we're continuously rolling over. Was there any valid entries here? I mean, yeah, I had some EMAs like 9 and 20 EMA, and I was trying to buy these dips, but clearly these dips weren't working. And that was the same mistake I made on Friday, where look, we had a super strong move, right? Early in the morning, super strong move, and that one, just a complete sell-off. We had a 5-minute CBC flip to the downside, right? And look at the attempts long I took. Took this attempt long, ate the stop. Took this attempt long, ate the stop, right? Again, there's a lack of confirmation, and I need to wait for a better confirmation of a maybe 3-minute flip to the upside for a CBC flip to actually attempt a long. So when we're looking at a trend, right, of course the intraday trend is bullish here, but we clearly had an intraday trend flip to the downside when we were unable to hold the initial balance high, and we continued to create lower highs over here. And if you take a look at the 5-minute chart, we have a 5-minute CBC sell and a 5-minute CBC engulfing to the downside, holding below the initial bounce low and continuously selling off, right? If we want to take a good trend, a good trade setup, the most ideal thing that I like to look for is just a trend, a level, and a signal, right? So trend is clear to the downside, but grand scheme of things, we still are in a bullish market, so I have to pick my spots as to where I want to long, right? What's the next level? The next level is the opening print here, which is the opening price. As you can see, once we tested the opening print, we caught a super nice rally straight back to the initial bounce high. This would have been a great trade entry with very low risk, right? If I had just waited for this setup here, right? More so around like 11:45 right before lunchtime. But typically by then, like that's kind of over with my lunch hour. But if you take a look right here, right, we had 2-minute buy. Not only we have a 2-minute buy, we had a 2-minute CBC flip to the upside. So let's say we didn't really want to take the 2-minute buy, but we wanted to take the 2-minute CBC flip. We could have entered on the 2-minute CBC flip here, right, risking slightly below this pivot low, right? So we could just say a whole number 3 or 7, right? So let's just pick 3 in this sake, right? 3 right here, right? And we would have just targeted IB high. Why? Because that's the most recent pivot to the upside. This itself gave a 1 to 2.87 R trade. So, that's a pretty good R trade. And if you take a look at the bigger time frame, the 5-minute chart, right, we ended up getting a 5-minute CBC up with the upside, and ever since there, we've created higher lows. So pulled back. This is a strength inside initial balance trade now, where we pulled it back inside somewhere initial balance, and the level we're trading off of is the opening print here, right? So opening print, and then we continue to rally to the upside. So that's Tuesday's action. Let's review what I did wrong on Tuesday. I basically was long EMAs with no confirmation. So this was a major issue for myself, not only on Tuesday, but also on Friday. So I'm going to highlight this, right? And then also on Friday, I was logging EMAs with no confirmation, right? So those were two big issues, not trusting the plan, trading too many accounts at once. So that's like not so much technical. That's just mainly myself. But again, long EMAs with no confirmation, that's just not my edge. Maybe I just don't trade EMAs the right way, right? But if it's not working for me, I have to cut it out because what? I'm going to keep doing the same thing and keep bleeding my accounts throughout. Okay, anyways, let's take a look on NQ on Wednesday now, right? So this is Wednesday. Right? Wednesday. My initial game plan went into Wednesday was more so of any type of pullback towards, I remember I had a level here, I believe. So if I replay the action, right, I had a level here. Yep. So I had a level here, and I was like, any type of pullback into this level, I'm just going to bid it. Okay, so I did bid it, right? And I essentially was looking for overnight highs. So this, in theory, would have been a good trade, right? Sometimes I just kind of buy the level, assuming that the level would hold. And we also pulled back into yesterday's high, which is this blue line here. So yesterday's high. And I was just like, if we pull back here into this level at 30067.5, I'm okay, taking a stab here, risking right below overnight lows and trying to target the highs because that's a 1 to 7 trade. A 1 to 7 trade is pretty insane if you ask me. But again, if we do take a look, we did have a 5-minute CVC flip to the downside. And ever since then, we never got a nice buy. If anything, I shouldn't be looking at the 5-minute, 10-minute is more so a better gauge for myself. But typically when you open up in equities, there is only, I think, like a 20% chance or odds that you actually do get a double break of overnight highs and overnight lows, right? So I pull up Edgeful and I take a look at the overnight range breakout. You see, you only get like ES or NQ, they're basically relatively the same, but ES or NQ, you only get about you get what, 75% chance essentially to get a single break. So because this level got tagged already, I knew my thesis was over, right? And typically when this gets tagged, I'm more so a little more short bias purely because, if there's only a 17% chance that this level at the overnight high gets tagged, I'm more so going to play to the downside, right? So because the overnight low got tagged, I wanted to see what the next price would show, right? So, breaking newer lows, testing the level down here, and we are creating a 2-minute CVC flip to the upside, but I was leaning a little more bearish. So you can see right there. So pause right here before I stopped out of the trade. So I ended up taking the 2-minute sell here, which, okay, again, this is a decent trade, I would say. So let's take a look at Wednesday. Wednesday, moment losses, longing a level with no confirmation. Was this the worst trade possible? I don't know, because I just bid the level with the 1 to 7 R trade. So imagine you're risking $100 to make $700. That was a decent shot, but I think because I took a loss so early into the session at 9:36, it just kind of like messed with my psychology a little bit. And then I shorted, right? The next trade I took I shorted the NQ with the opening print plus the level plus intraday trend, right? So I had multiple confluences, right? We're holding below the opening print here. We caught a nice rally to the downside, pulled back to the upside here, right? I shorted a 2-minute sell signal here against my level here, right? We did get a 2-minute CVC flip to the downside as confirmation, so it was looking fine until we rallied back up and held. Okay, so this I think was more of a normal loss, right? So this was a normal loss, but the first trade I think also was a normal loss. So I think in general, the Tuesday, right, I think was an okay day. It was an okay day. Just have to accept my decisions, right? So I think if I was to rate Tuesday, I would give Tuesday like, I don't know. Tuesday was more of like a B day, right? Let's just call it if I had to grade it, let me see if I could add like a little chart to the right side here. Or whatever. I'm gonna say Tuesday was more of like a B setup day. Wednesday was more of like, it wasn't bad. I'll give it like B plus, B plus. No, I'll just give it a B again because typically like Wednesday, the trade setup just didn't work. What am I gonna do? I can't do anything about it. Look, I ended up fading right after I got my stop ram. And ideally, I was targeting the IB low and then also the whole number at 900 right here, right? Let's see the trade. It ends up playing out, right? Trade ended up playing out. My stop's just a little too tight, but it is what it is. I should have risked slightly above the level. Like, let's see where it tagged out at 99. If anything, if I were to redo this stop placement, like I left it, I think 87, right? Just like barely above it. But yeah, maybe if I think I would have left it, I think I would have left it at 90, 91, 93, or 97, or 103. Those would have been like my actual stop prices. But it literally stopped like 100 and then it reversed. But yeah, I don't know. This show is a little tough. Let's see the rest of the action play out for I'm just going to end the replay. So leave replay. Yeah, this day was relatively tough. So relatively tough day, right? Relatively tough day on Wednesday. I just had to set the decisions that I made. And then I remember I ended up taking one more trade, right? I took one more trade on Wednesday. The trade didn't look bad. Like it really didn't look horrible. I think I took it on a smaller time frame. Yes, I think I took it on the 5 minute here. So, after overnight lows broke, right? Faded, tried to catch this short, ended up not working, right? And right after I got stopped out, I think I was a little impatient. But then again, after this happened, I kind of had I don't know, for some reason, because of time of day too, so I don't really hate the trade setup to be honest, but it was approaching 10:30, right? So trade entry for this last trade was at 10:15, and we're about 15 more minutes out until 10:30 is set, which means that the initial bounce low is being set. So if my thesis, is wrong to the downside, I was more like, we are at an all-time high market and the market gets squeezy out of nowhere. Let me see if I can catch a potential failure to go lower and higher low here. So I ended up taking the buy on this 5 minute buy, which also became a 5 minute CBC flip. Was it the strongest flip? Not so much because we didn't get the strongest candle confirmation to the upside here. But, we did have a low set in here and a potential higher low here. So with the potential higher low being this potential area, I know in theory, right, I could just have said like, oh, I'm gonna risk, you know, I'm gonna risk low of day here at initial bounce low, but I ended up just risking slightly below this swing low, which was a pretty good stop. Now you look at a hindsight, but ended up getting stopped out. I was just incorrect on direction on this day, and once I ran initial bounce low, kind of held the lows. Could have caught a better trade just catching a failed auction to the upside because the odds of the yesterday's high and yesterday's low breaking is like, I don't know, it's like 10% chance. So there was a better chance that I could have just bid this level, right? I literally could just bid this, right? Put my stop at this, but the stops are super wide. I wouldn't have left this stop. What, that's 91 to 27. That's a 70-point stop. No shot would have done anything like this. So hindsight, Wednesday, right? This was Wednesday. Wednesday, B day, right? B day just because I just was wrong in direction multiple times. And it was just an okay day. I just had to set my decisions. Let's take a look at Thursday. Thursday was a great day for me. Thursday was like, this is Thursday gave me the vibes where I was trying to catch something similar to this, to the upside, where I'm trying to catch a fishy long below the opening print, right? Similar to right here. I mean, I kind of caught the long on the reclaim of the opening print, which is a better setup. Tried to catch a long one 2 times below the opening print, clearly below the opening print, so it's a little tough, but Thursday, very, very simple setup. There's not much to explain about it, but let's talk about Thursday. Thursday, open inside day, right? Open inside day, pulled back to a hourly level I had. And once we pulled back to the hourly level I had, once we sold off and I caught a 2 minute bullish engulfing and a 2 minute buy signal here, this was a great, great risk to reward trade. What? I was risking, look, like I said, my stops, I like to leave them at either like 83, 87, right? Anything 7, 3, 7 and 3 are the numbers I like to leave my stops at in terms of like the last digit. And I long this, right? Just targeting the prior day high. Why? Because this is my textbook setup. My textbook setup states that if we open inside yesterday's range, and especially in the all-time trending all-time market where we're trending to the upside, I'm going to target the highs, most likely, right? One thing that I think I could have done better, I wrote down for myself on Thursdays, is that holding to the 30% initial bounce extension to the upside on strong trending days, right? Because with the initial bounce stat, there's about I want to say, there is a, okay, let's refine the stat right here. Let's do about levels. If you take a look at the breakout days, there's about a 72% chance that your 30% extension range of the initial bounce high gets tagged. So if I believe correctly, I think that was sitting around like 81. So I think 81 was the 30% range, right? Bro, this would have been a 4R trade. That's beautiful. But I only took it for about 2.9 hours or 3 hours. Not only, but because this was a great trade regardless. 3-hour trade, beautiful on Thursday. Ended up taking a nice dub on Thursday, and Friday was a very, very tough day for me, right? So it's like a Friday action now. Friday, why was it tough? I think the toughest thing for me on Friday was the fact that I missed the initial back test on the opening print, and we were like, this is like 2 to 4, this is like 3 minutes into the market, right? Typically when we're this close into the market open, I don't feel too comfortable. We were just bull flagging the whole entire time, mind you. We ride to the upside, and again, this was like a reoccurring theme that I had this week, which was on Tuesday. Super strong action, like I can see on Tuesday, And the issue is that I was logging EMAs with no confirmation, right? So the dips into, the 9 and 20 EMAs on the 3 minute, or, the like whatever time frame, right? Just was not, I was not taking, I was just buying red, right? Assuming that will flip green. But essentially, that clearly was not happening, right? Buying red and trading in the assumption that we flip green, that clearly was not happening, right? So, I mean, hindsight, if it would have worked, right? So there's two ways I like to see a loss in the trade, right? Number one, I could take a trade that's a poor quality setup, right? And I could get paid for it. The short term, the short term win for getting paid for it is that, yes, I'll be green the accounts. I'll be able to be eligible for payout. Like I'll feel good on a Friday. It's great, this and that. But in theory, if I'm being totally honest, EMAs just aren't part of my playbook like that. So if I got paid to, just take a mediocre setup, I'm gonna do that repeated action over and over again. I'll play another EMA bounce on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right? Maybe not Thursday, maybe not Friday next week, right? But I'll continuously redo the fact that I'll try to play the EMA bounces. But clearly, because they aren't deep ingrained in my strategy and they are a lagging indicator, I don't know. I just don't want to. I don't want to put in. I wouldn't say it's a bad habit, but I wouldn't want to implement something that I don't feel like I have 100% conviction on in my strategy into my playbook like that. Maybe over time, as I get better, you know, it would be fine. But clearly, it just wasn't. It wasn't it. So yeah, so Friday I was logging EMAs and no confirmation. So straight like Tuesday, straight rally to the upside, and I just kept buying the dips. Bought the dip once here, failed. I think I kept adding to my position until I blew one of my accounts. Am I happy about it? No, because I could get a payout on that, but it's a lesson to be learned, and that's why I'm doing these personal reviews for myself to ensure that I'm going to try my best to not repeat the same mistakes. And then, this trade setup was fine, right? I think I ended up taking a trade setup here, which ended up failing. Reason being is because I did see at least a 2-minute CBC flip, a 2-minute buy to the upside along off the opening print. But clearly this was lower high being set lower high. And once we actually tagged into the next level, there was a better entry, somewhat entry long that I did take on a evaluation account to pass my TPT to the upside. But still, this trade in general right here wasn't an A+ setup, and I'm glad I took it off where I did, because I was just trying to take it to the middle of session range. So that's like 50% mark. You can see from the lows to the high, retracement to the 50% the 50% mark, and that was about it. Nothing special about that trade. After this happened, I had control and I just stopped. I said, this wasn't it. But yeah, so if I were to recap my week overall, right? Overall, I think okay, Tuesday I say was definitely like an A day. Was definitely an A day. Friday I would say was like a C day. But in general, right? If I were to look hindsight at everything I did this week, was it the best week? No, right? But I think there's always gonna be something to take away. So number one thing I'm taking away into this week is that I'm not gonna take EMA trades anymore. So EMAs with no confirmation. At least I won't take any EMA trades with no confirmation. I need at least a buy signal, sell signal, or a CBC flip on my side, right? And no confirmation of CBC. So in general, just lacking some confirmation, and it's dangerous in this market if you don't take any trades with proper confirmation, because you'll get punished. And clearly I got punished this week. So going into next week, I'm going to review these flaws, and I'll continuously log every single day and do end of week review just to make sure that I stay on track with my own trading, and I continuously refine my skills over time, because at the end of the day, been doing this for coming up 6-ish years now, and there's always more to learn. There's always more room to get better, right? Because it's trading at the end of the day. Markets are always evolving. You have to adapt with the markets. And yeah, I'll see what sets up into next week.